this week, you are going to be composing your very own short story and receiving feedback from peers as well as me, your instructor. So it's worth noting that this assignment is a two-part assignment. For part one, you will post a completed short story for your peers and instructor to provide constructive feedback. Later in the term, as part of your writing portfolio, you will consider the feedback provided and revise the short story. So do know that this is not the end of this story for this class. In part two of this assignment, you will provide feedback on at least 2 classmates' stories using the guidelines provided. Please read all requirements for both parts of the assignment. So part one, which will be due Friday at 11:59, you will submit your own original short story. The story can be about anything you choose, but it should be categorized as literary fiction rather than genre fiction. This is something that we went over a couple of weeks ago, but literary fiction is really going to be character-driven and complex and deal with complex themes versus genre fiction, which can be all of those things, but is often more plot driven and has elements such as fantasy or thriller or suspense in a way that is more formulaic. So we're wanting to shift away from genre fiction and more to literary fiction for this assignment. Your requirements are this. You have a minimum of 500 words. For many of you, 500 words, though, will not be enough. I have, however, capped you at 1,500 words maximum. We do want this to fall into that short story frame or the flash fiction frame, which most agree runs from about 500 words to maybe up to, I think your textbook says 2,000 words. You will use MLA format for page setup, which just basically means you will have your name, my name, the course, the date, a title for your story, and your story double spaced. You'll have page numbers with your last number, name, and page number at the top of each page. So I will want you to be observing that MLA format just so that it's easy to follow, and really double spacing is as important as anything else as far as being easy to read when it comes to formatting. As you write your short story, you should keep the following in mind. Story should present a clear perspective based on a character struggling with a complex situation. The story should be character-driven. Now, to be clear, complex situation does not necessarily mean that there's a lot externally going on. It could be that it's more of a complex internal situation. In fact, most of the best writing is dealing with a character who is struggling internally. So you'll want to consider your character and their situations through that lens. Stories should also have a plot that includes a beginning, middle, and end, which means your story should follow Freytag's pyramid. Because it's literary fiction and flash fiction, each part of Freytag's pyramid may not be equally developed, but there should be a clear beginning, middle, and end. There should be clear literary conflict, and there should be some sort of resolution, even if the conflict isn't fully resolved. Keep in mind, when I'm talking about literary conflict, we're talking about self versus self, self versus man, self versus nature, self versus society. You will want to use vivid descriptions that will help your reader feel as though they are experiencing what you are writing about. You can enhance your descriptions through the use of imagery and specific details. The story should include a clear setting and characters. You will want your narrative to reveal conflict, emotions, and actions within the main character and supporting characters. The use of dialogue between characters or even internally will add realism to the story and make your story stronger. Stay mindful of the details you include. Just because you as the writer know something about a character or situation doesn't mean that every detail you know must appear on the page. Use your understanding of the characters and situations to inform what you choose to include in your story. Every single sentence in a short story matters. Choose judiciously. Ultimately, the reader should feel, see, and understand the experience you're writing about. I encourage you to review the short story introduction resources from week 2 that you studied for your quiz, as well as that section in your textbook that talks about how to craft short stories and looking at the short story as a form. If you need help getting started, if you're stuck, you're not really sure what you want to write about, I encourage you to have a look at pages 148 through 150 in your textbook with the list of kickstarts. Those are all good places to start. I've provided you a link to some short story prompts. I provided you a link with instructions for how to outline a short story if you need to do that before you actually write it. And then I've also provided you a video where a young writer talks about how she approaches getting started. She doesn't really love short story prompts, but she focuses in on other ways to get started that might be helpful to you. The key here, though, is simply to get started. There's always reasons to not write. Here, we want to use our reasons to write. We want to get whatever our ideas are on the page, even if our first run of it, our first draft isn't that great. That's to be expected. First drafts are usually not that great. It's okay, but you do need to get the story out. Now, part 2 will be due Sunday at 11:59. So you'll turn in your story on Friday, then you'll have Saturday and Sunday to complete this next component of the assignment. So part 2 will require you to provide feedback on at least 2 classmates' stories. To do this, you will complete the peer review document. So you'll have to download that for each classmate story and upload as a reply to their post. So let's have a look at that now. So the peer review worksheet requires you to look carefully at least 2 group members' stories in a thoughtful, honest, thorough, but compassionate manner. So directions: provide feedback for each category, answering all questions thoughtfully. Keep in mind, your feedback should be honest, thorough, and thoughtful. Then it asks for the author of the work being reviewed, so the person who wrote the short story, and your name is the reviewer. Then in the boxes, you will type in your feedback for each of these sections, for each category of this worksheet. So you'll start off with praise. What's going well? What do you like? Then you'll provide questions, places that are maybe a little murky for you, places that you don't think the story is working the best. Then you'll look at polish. What could the writer specifically do to make the story better? Then we're going to look more specifically at different sections of the story. So we're going to look at narration, considering the point of view and how we might make that stronger. We want to consider the character. Who are our characters? Are they complex or more one-dimensional? Are they realistic or not so much? How might we make those characters stronger? Then we want to look at the plot. Is the plot line believable? Is there a clear conflict? Again, it doesn't have to be external conflict. It can be internal, likely should be internal. And how might we work on this plot to either make the climax or turning point of the story more clear, to provide a clearer resolution? Because this is that flash fiction, the resolution may not be as developed as, say, it might be in a novel, but there should be some sort of natural conclusion to the story, that the story feels like it has a clear beginning, middle, and ending. Then you'll have a look at setting and how the writer can make the setting more vivid, use the setting to make the story stronger and more vibrant. Then you'll want to consider the theme. What is that overall central message that's being presented in this story? Is it supported through the plot and the characters and the setting, or is it kind of getting lost? Help your writer make their theme, their central message clearer to the reader. And then finally, I want you to look at style. What about that word choice? What about the turn of phrases and sentences? What about the use of similes and metaphors? Are they working? How could your partner make those better? These are all things that you will consider when you are completing the peer review worksheet. You will do this for 2 classmates. A few guidelines for good feedback. First, read through a few tips for participating in a short fiction workshop in your textbook on pages 150 to 151. While typically a workshop happens face-to-face, with this being an online course, we are doing it in this peer review written format, but the principles of how to provide honest, helpful, compassionate feedback still stand strong here. I also encourage you to have a look at this link on how to give feedback on fiction. And you should remember, you should be honest yet compassionate when providing feedback. Your goal is to help your classmates, and how you present your feedback will determine how useful it is to your classmate. Being cruel, snarky, or derogatory will not only not be helpful to your classmates, but it will negatively impact your grade on the assignment. Feedback should be constructive rather than destructive. Approach the feedback through the lens of helping the work be better, not destroying it or reconstructing it to reflect your worldview. Again, how you view the world is not necessarily what's important here. It's how the writer of this piece of writing is choosing to present the world as the character sees it. Your feedback should be thoughtful and thorough. In other words, it should be substantive and meaningful. You do not want to just phone this in. One of the keys to being a successful creative writer is not only taking in feedback, but giving good feedback, thinking critically about others' writings. Now, some guidelines for receiving feedback, because the truth is, when we are writing, it's so very close to us, and we feel so intertwined with our work that it can be hard to hear when things aren't working. But We need to try to avoid defensiveness. Our writing is close to us as it's deeply personal and important to us, but writing can always be improved. It's very easy to immediately justify our writing choices, grow defensive, or shut down when receiving feedback. But a key to growing as a writer is to accept and embrace feedback. As such, you should be open to feedback. You should understand that feedback is commenting on the work of writing rather than you as a person. It's not a personal attack. It's meant to help you see places where the writing could be improved. You should engage in reflection. Not all feedback has to be taken, but not all feedback should be disregarded. A vital part of creative writing is getting feedback, determining its value, and incorporating what resonates the most with you as the writer. Your partner might suggest something that you just wholeheartedly do not agree with it. You don't have to accept that feedback. But just because you don't agree with one part of a peer review doesn't mean that everything that's there is not useful. I encourage you to check out this article on accepting feedback and how to approach feedback when you get it. Now, let's talk about grading, because the grading for this is broken up into a couple of parts. So up to 5 points will be awarded based on the quality of your short story. Even though that you will revise this later for a later grade in your writing portfolio, this is being graded as a final draft of a short story or a late draft of a short story. So it should come in as polished as you can make it. You will also receive up to a 1.5 for peer review 1 and up to a 1.5 in peer review 2. Now, here's the thing. The final 2 points will be determined based on how your group provides feedback to all classmates in your group, which means each group member must receive at least 2 peer reviews. If not, all group members will lose those 2 points. So it's important that you work as a team to make sure everybody in the group has received feedback, because the feedback is so critical in creative writing. You have to be engaged in the peer review process here. So I'd like for you to look at the creative writing rubric. You'll notice that when I am evaluating your short story, I'm looking at organization and cohesion, voice and tone, and the actual original creative writing, how you're using imagery, detail, figurative language, dialogue, all of those sorts of things. So you will get up to 5 points based on where you align on the rubric here. Then with peer review, it's going to be a case of you did fully do this, you kind of did it, that's going to be that 0.75, or that you didn't do it and it wasn't very adequate at all. And then for the full group, all group members receive feedback from at least 2 classmates, or at least one person did not. And if not, the whole group's going to lose points here. Worth noting, if you do not participate in peer review at all, even if all the other members in the group got the two peer reviews, you will not get credit if you do not participate at all with peer review. Now, the final thing I want to remind you of is academic integrity. This work should be work that you are creating solely by you and only you, which means that you should not be cheating, forging anything, plagiarizing, which would be, directly copying and pasting, reusing work from another course or course attempt. That's considered self-plagiarism. Using AI to write or to enhance your work. That would include using things like translators or Grammarly. This is a writing course. We need to know what your actual writing looks like. Or having someone else complete the work for you or with you, partnering with the work. For a first offense, you get a 0 on the assignment. For a second, it's an F in the course. I wanted to go over all of these parts for you because this assignment is worth 10% of your grade. So it's an important assignment that you do well on. If you have questions or need help, please reach out to me. I want to partner with you. I'm happy to look at your work with you prior to you submitting it for this assignment, as well as afterwards as you are taking in that feedback. I look forward to seeing what you do here. I cannot wait to read your work. And again, if you need me, just let me know.